Welcome to One Quick Story from the Kyle Olson Show. My colleague at Breitbart News, Allum Bokhari, had a story I wanted you to hear about. It's titled, Facebook Fact Checker Fact Checks Critique of Itself. Allum joins me now. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Kyle. Great to be on.
So you write, quote, Facebook Fact Checker lead stories took the social network system of fact-checking to farcical levels when it fact-checked a critique of itself by the Federalist Molly Hemingway. First, tell me, who are these so-called fact-checkers?
Well, after Trump won the election in 2016, there was this whole panic in Silicon Valley over so-called fake news and so-called misinformation that journalists and tech leftists believed had swung the election in Trump's favor. So this whole fact-checking apparatus that we're so familiar with today did not exist before Trump was elected in 2016. That was the impetus, as it was the impetus for a lot of other Silicon Valley's methods of censorship. And the way the fact-checking system has been set up is essentially as a means for mainstream media publications and liberal organizations to punish their competitors in conservative and independent media. There's a whole network of accredited third-party fact-checkers that Facebook uses to fact-check certain stories on the platform. And this is Facebook's way of saying, well, look, it's not us deciding to fact-check, Breitbart News or the Federalist in this case. It's just a third-party fact-checker, an independent expert, except a lot of these independent experts are just the mainstream media. So USA Today is a fact-checker. The Washington Post is a fact-checker. And the way the system works is once a post on Facebook gets fact-checked, its distribution is reduced, so it gets censored. So Facebook has empowered outlets like USA Today, outlets like the Washington Post, to censor their competitors in conservative and independent media on Facebook.
So how would you describe those fact-checkers? How would you describe their worldview? Is it that of Donald Trump's?
Not at all. I mean, the worldview of the Facebook fact checkers is by and large the worldview of the liberal mainstream media. It's diametrically opposed to Donald Trump. It's a worldview that says, America is a white supremacist country, that there are 47 genders, and all sorts of other unscientific nonsense. But this is the worldview that's dominant in Silicon Valley, and this is the worldview that's dominant among their fact checkers. These are people who believe that that Russia stole the 2016 election. And it's very telling to me that none of these fact checkers have ever censored or suppressed, say, for example, Rachel Maddow for saying Vladimir Putin was blackmailing Donald Trump. Even The Guardian called Maddow out on that. But, I've never seen MSNBC's page get censored on Facebook.
So what exactly did what did they fact check of what Molly Hemingway wrote?
Yeah, so this was particularly ridiculous. So Molly Hemingway is a writer for The Federalist, fantastic writer for The Federalist, but she pointed out that a big tech-backed fact-checking outfit was claiming it had debunked evidence in support of claims of election problems in Georgia. And Hemingway wasn't saying the case was completely correct, but she was saying that the fact checker hadn't sufficiently debunked it. And then what happened is this very same fact checker called Lead Stories then comes in and fact checks Hemingway's Federalist article critiquing them. So we've now reached this ridiculous situation where if you criticize one of these fact checkers, they'll fact check you and reduce the distribution of your story.
So you just sort of touched on my next question, and I want you to get into that a little bit more. So what impact do these fact checks have on content creators like Breitbart News or The Federalist, but also on content consumers?
Well, it prevents, from the perspective of the publisher, it reduces the distribution of your post. It means less people will see it on Facebook. Some people will still see it. It just won't really go viral. This is what they've done this to Breitbart News many times. They did it to the New York Post right before the election with the Hunter Biden story. They actually did that in advance of any action by a fact checker because they were so panicked about this story. And from the point of view of the consumer, it means the consumer is being cut off from news stories that might otherwise be very popular and very interesting to the public and go viral. So Facebook and its fact checkers are stepping in between publishers and readers. They're preventing readers from even being able to see on their feeds on Facebook stories that are going viral in conservative media.
So critics of Facebook and Twitter in particular are saying that these companies are operating more like publishers than they are platforms. So now that Joe Biden has been declared the president-elect, what do you foresee happening in terms of repealing Section 230, in terms of any sort of regulation or reforms when it comes to censorship in these big social media companies?
Well, first of all, hashtag not my president, as the left has said for 4 years. But
Mm.
in terms of Section 230, so this is interesting. So there actually is time for the Federal Communications Commission to act on a request made by President Trump in the summer, which is to reinterpret Section 230. Section 230, by the way, is the law that essentially allows tech companies to censor whoever they want without suffering any legal consequences. And this is despite the fact that they're behaving like publishers. So Section 230 was supposed to provide certain legal protections to tech platforms. But what is a platform? This is an important question. So if you're in a library and you read a book and this book defames you, you're not going to sue the library over that book. You're going to sue the publisher of that book because the library is simply carrying it. And for a long time, tech companies said, we're the same thing. We simply carry other people's speech. We're not the publishers of Twitter posts. Our users are the publishers of their own Twitter posts. But now, of course, that explanation doesn't really make sense because they're behaving like publishers. And there's this petition up before the FCC started by Trump to reinterpret those rules. Now, the question is, will the FCC have enough time to act on that before Biden gets in January? Because Ajit Pai, the chairman, has already said he's going to step down. But there is theoretically a pathway for the FCC to do that. A new commissioner, Nathan Symington, has just been appointed. And one of the other commissioners, Brendan Carr, said we actually can move forward on this rulemaking change. And we just need, now we just need Ajit Pai to get on board with it. And then you've got a 3-2 majority on the FCC to do that. So we'll see if that happens over the next month. But if it does, it could have, wide ramifications for the tech industry and for their Section 230 protections.
So explain how these companies went from acting like libraries, as you say, to acting more like publishers. Was that just sort of market forces? Was that the ideology of the workers? What really drove that?
Well, the big catalyst was Trump's election in 2016. Before that, you still had a general atmosphere of free speech on platforms like Twitter and Facebook. They had started to ban conservatives. They had started to ban right-wingers that offended, their liberal employees, but they didn't really have any systemic policies that discriminated against conservatives just, on the eve of Trump's election. That all changed when he got in. We saw the footage I leaked at Breitbart of the Google executives just breaking down and panicking a few days after the Trump election. It was the same story all across Silicon Valley. So this really drove the change. This led to, you pointed out, their employees. They have extremely far left employees. They started agitating within these companies to do more censorship of so-called fake news. At the same time, you had some external forces. You had traditional news publishers that would relentlessly bombard these companies with bad press if they didn't censor certain people like Alex Jones and conservative media. They're still bombarding Facebook with bad press, actually, for allowing some conservative media outlets to continue to have success on the platform. There was also pressure from NGOs. There was pressure from, European governments. A lot of pressure from New Zealand and Canada to clamp down on hate speech. So they're facing all these pressures as well, in addition to the pressure they face from their own employees. Not to mention the fact that the leaders of these companies are very progressive too. Mark Zuckerberg's a progressive, Jack Dorsey's a progressive, the leaders of Google are progressives as well. So this is something they believe in, and they're also, under pressure from. Oh, and the other force I neglected to mention was advertisers. You have advertiser boycotts against these companies when they don't censor enough so-called hate speech. So multiple factors that drove this shift in the internet from what it used to be, this this ideal of an open marketplace of ideas where everyone competes on a level playing field. Anyone with a laptop can access a global audience, to the current state of a very censored, controlled platform, controlled media that's in the hands of a few corporate giants.
Mm-hmm. Allum Bokhari of Breitbart News, he published a book in September titled Deleted, Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election, so check that out. Allum, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you so much for joining me for One Quick Story. For more of my work, go to Breitbart.com or find me on Parler, Kyle Olson 4. Kyle Olson 4. KYLEOLSON and the number 4. This is One Quick Story from The Kyle Olson Show.